Well, darling, you do look stunning. You look divine, darling.
Oh, Ethel, what is all this?
And during that time, I consider the years I spent on I Love Lucy to be perhaps the biggest ripoff of my career.
I Love Lucy is remembered as one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time, a groundbreaking series that brought laughter to millions and forever changed television. At its heart was Lucille Ball's comedic genius, matched perfectly by the witty charm of Vivian Vance as Ethel Mertz. On screen, Lucy and Ethel seemed inseparable, the very definition of friendship. But off-screen, the truth was far more complicated. For decades, whispers of tension, jealousy, and personal battles swirled around the cast, and Vivian Vance kept silent until now. At 70, long after the cameras stopped rolling, she finally opened up about what really happened behind the scenes of I Love Lucy. From her difficult relationship with William Frawley to the unspoken struggles she endured working alongside Lucy, Vivian's revelations are shocking, emotional, and heartbreaking. Buckle up. Because the truth about I Love Lucy isn't what you think. Before I Love Lucy made her a household name, Vivian Vance was anything but a TV star. Born Vivian Roberta Jones in 1909 in Cherryvale, Kansas, she grew up in a small-town environment that gave her little hint of the fame waiting ahead. As a young woman, she gravitated toward the stage, developing a passion for performance that would eventually lead her to Broadway. But the journey was far from glamorous. Vivian struggled financially, often scraping by while chasing roles in theater productions. Her natural comedic timing, expressive face, and quick wit made her stand out, but she was never considered a leading lady by Hollywood standards. By the 1940s, Vance had built a respectable stage career, appearing in productions like The Ba-I, Voice of the Turtle, and The Cradle Will Rock. She had the talent, but not the star image, and in Hollywood at that time, image often mattered more than ability. She was older than many aspiring actresses, heavier than the thin Hollywood ideal, and had no influential connections to fast-track her career. In many ways, the odds were stacked against her. Yet destiny had other plans. When Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz were developing I Love Lucy in the early 1950s, they needed someone to play Lucy's neighbor and best friend. The character would have to be funny, supportive, and able to balance Lucy's zany antics with sharp, deadpan humor. Lucille Ball had final say on casting, and though many names were floated, Vance stood out in her audition. She was natural, unpretentious, and could deliver lines with a comedic punch without stealing focus from the star. Landing the role of Ethel Mertz was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it gave Vance the platform she had dreamed of, television's first, true sitcom airing into millions of living rooms across America. On the other, it locked her into a role that would shape, and often limit, how the public saw her for the rest of her life. Vivian threw herself into the part, quickly creating one of the most iconic comedy duos in television history. Ethel wasn't just Lucy's sidekick. She was a fully realized character who gave Lucy's wild schemes credibility and balance. The chemistry between Ball and Vance was undeniable, and audiences adored their friendship. Almost overnight, Vivian went from a struggling stage actress to one of the most recognizable faces on TV. But behind the laughter, there were cracks forming. Vivian Vance was not always comfortable in Ethel's skin. She was younger and more glamorous than the character allowed her to be. Producers often dressed her in frumpy clothing and played up her age, especially in contrast to Lucy. Even more frustrating for Vance was her pairing with William Frawley, who played Fred Mertz. Frawley was 22 years her senior, and the writers portrayed them as a mismatched, bickering couple. Off camera, the situation was even worse. Vivian began to feel trapped, adored by the audience, yet boxed in by an image that was far from who she truly was. For her, I Love Lucy was both a career-making opportunity and the beginning of private struggles that would haunt her for years. And as she would later reveal, the truth behind the scenes was nothing like the cheerful friendship viewers saw on screen. If I Love Lucy gave audiences one of the most beloved comedy duos in history with Lucy and Ethel, it also gave them one of television's most infamous feuds behind the scenes, Vivian Vance versus William Frawley. On screen, Fred and Ethel Mertz were written as a quirky, constantly bickering couple. Their arguments provided comic relief and balance to Lucy and Ricky's antics. To millions of viewers, their banter was hilarious, even endearing. But what fans didn't know at the time was that much of that tension wasn't acting at all. It was real, raw, and deeply personal. Vivian Vance and William Frawley couldn't stand each other. Their animosity began almost immediately after filming started. Vance, who was in her early 40s, resented being cast opposite Frawley, who was over 60. She felt the age gap made their marriage on the show seem unbelievable, even insulting. Privately, she complained that being tied to Frawley as a romantic partner ruined any chance she had of being seen as attractive or glamorous. Frawley, for his part, was notorious in Hollywood for his abrasive personality. He was a heavy drinker, had a sharp tongue, and wasn't shy about voicing his disdain for co-stars. When he overheard Vivian making a comment about their age difference, he never forgave her. From then on, the two were locked in a silent battle of insults, cold shoulders, and outright hostility. Crew members recalled the tension being so thick that it often seeped into the set. Vivian would roll her eyes at Frawley's antics, while Frawley would fire back with biting remarks. At times, the two refused to even speak to each other off camera. And yet, when the director called action, they slipped seamlessly into Fred and Ethel's marriage dynamic, their real-life resentment fueling the sharp comedic timing audiences loved. Lucille Ball, ever the professional, did her best to keep the peace, but even she admitted that the feud was unfixable. The situation became so infamous that when Desilu executives once floated the idea of a spin-off series starring Fred and Ethel, Vivian reportedly refused outright. She said she would never spend another moment working with Frawley if she could avoid it. The tension took a toll on Vance. She loved acting and adored the fans who cherished Ethel, but the daily grind of dealing with Frawley's hostility drained her emotionally. To make matters worse, the scripts often leaned into jokes that made Ethel seem nagging, unattractive, or older than she really was. For a woman who longed to be recognized for her true talent, and who still saw herself as vibrant and glamorous, this constant undermining was painful. Yet, despite the hostility, there was no denying the chemistry. Frawley's gruff delivery and Vance's sharp wit made them one of the funniest pairs on television. Their personal hatred, ironically, gave their performances a spark that no scriptwriter could have invented. Fans believed Fred and Ethel were a real married couple, always fighting but ultimately inseparable. In later years, Vivian admitted the feud had shaped much of her experience on I Love Lucy. It was a reminder of the sacrifices she had to make for her career. While the public adored Ethel, Vivian felt trapped in a role where her personal dignity was constantly tested. And her battles with Frawley were only the beginning of the struggles she would endure on and off screen. For all the tension Vivian Vance endured with William Frawley, there was one relationship that defined her experience on I Love Lucy, her bond with Lucille Ball. On screen, Lucy and Ethel were inseparable, partners in mischief who shared laughs, tears, and countless schemes gone wrong. Off-screen, however, their friendship was far more layered, supportive, competitive, and sometimes quietly painful for Vivian. Lucille Ball was not only the star of the show, but also its powerhouse. She co-ran Desilu Studios with her then-husband, Desi Arnaz, and had enormous control over casting, scripts, and direction. From the moment Vivian auditioned, Lucy saw in her a natural talent. She knew that the show needed an actress who could stand toe-to-toe with her without overshadowing her. Vivian was witty, sharp, and fearless, and Lucy immediately sensed she was the perfect Ethel. Their on-screen chemistry was undeniable, and Lucy and Vivian quickly became friends behind the scenes. Lucy admired Vivian's timing, and Vivian respected Lucy's drive and vision. For Vivian, who had spent years struggling in theater and bit parts, working alongside one of television's greatest stars felt like a dream come true. Fans often wrote letters saying how much they adored the Lucy-Ethel friendship, not realizing that the bond extended beyond the cameras. But this friendship came with its challenges. Lucy, fiercely protective of her spotlight, insisted that Ethel be written as the less glamorous of the two. While Lucy could wear stylish clothes, flirt with the audience, and carry the big comic stunts, Vivian was relegated to frumpy dresses, unflattering wigs, and jokes about her weight or looks. To keep Lucy shining, Vivian had to dim her own light. This became one of Vivian's greatest struggles. She wanted to be taken seriously as an actress and as a woman. She knew she had beauty and charisma, but the role of Ethel constantly painted her as older, unattractive, and nagging. At times, Vivian confided to friends that she felt trapped. She loved Lucy dearly, but she couldn't ignore the fact that their professional dynamic often hurt her self-esteem. Despite this tension, Lucy stood by Vivian in moments that truly mattered. When Vivian's personal life began to unravel, Lucy offered support. When Vivian battled health issues, Lucy visited and checked in. Their bond wasn't just professional, it became deeply personal, something akin to sisterhood. Fans might not know that after I Love Lucy ended, Lucy fought to bring Vivian back for future projects. She wanted her by her side in The Lucy Show and Here's Lucy. Although Vivian sometimes hesitated, worn down by years of typecasting as Ethel, she agreed because she cherished working with Lucy. Even when distance grew between them later in life, Lucy openly admitted that Vivian was her favorite co-star. Their relationship was far from perfect. Lucy's need to remain in control and Vivian's quiet yearning for recognition created an undercurrent of unspoken tension. But at its heart, their friendship was genuine, and it carried Vivian through some of her darkest times. By the end of her career, Vivian Vance would openly credit Lucille Ball for changing her life, both for better and worse. Lucy gave her the platform that made her a household name, but it also came at the cost of her own identity as an actress and a woman. It was a complicated love story, not between two characters, but between two women navigating fame, power, and friendship in Hollywood's golden age of television. As the years passed, Vivian Vance tried to move beyond I Love Lucy, but the shadow of Ethel Mertz followed her everywhere. Casting directors saw her as nothing more than Lucy's frumpy sidekick, and fans rarely recognized the vibrant, witty, and elegant woman behind the role. For Vivian, this typecasting was both a blessing and a curse. While she was grateful for the fame the show had given her, it also locked her into a character that didn't reflect who she truly was. Vivian's personal life was equally turbulent. She went through multiple marriages, struggled with depression, and often felt overshadowed by her iconic co-star. Privately, she confessed to friends that while she loved Lucy, she sometimes resented the way the role of Ethel had diminished her. She longed for opportunities to play roles that showcased her beauty and depth, not just comedic nagging or second billing beside the star. Health struggles soon added to her pain. In the 1970s, Vivian was diagnosed with breast cancer, a battle that would shape the final chapter of her life. Despite her illness, she continued to appear on screen occasionally, often reuniting with Lucy for television specials. These reunions reminded fans of the magic the two women created together, but they also served as a reminder to Vivian of how inextricably her legacy was tied to Ethel Mertz. It wasn't until the end of her life that Vivian finally opened up about the truth. In interviews and conversations with those close to her, she admitted the conflicting emotions she carried about I Love Lucy. She was proud of the groundbreaking work they had done, proud of being part of a show that had defined television comedy, and deeply grateful for her friendship with Lucy. But she also revealed the toll it had taken, the typecasting, the hit to her self-confidence, and the difficulty of separating herself from Ethel. Perhaps the most poignant truth Vivian shared was her fear of being forgotten as anything more than Lucy's sidekick. She wanted the world to see her as a woman of depth, strength, and talent, not just the comic relief in someone else's story. This vulnerability gave fans a glimpse into the real Vivian, someone who loved deeply, who struggled quietly, and who carried both gratitude and sorrow for the role that defined her. In her final years, Lucy remained by Vivian's side. When Vivian grew too ill to leave her home, Lucy would visit her, sometimes just sitting in silence, sometimes reminiscing about the laughter they once shared on set. Their bond had weathered the storms of fame, ego, and disappointment, and in the end, it was love and loyalty that endured. Vivian Vance passed away in 1979 at the age of 70, leaving behind a legacy that was far more complex than most fans realized. To the world, she was Ethel Mertz, the loyal best friend who made Lucy Ricardo's antics all the more hilarious. But behind that character was a woman who wrestled with identity, insecurity, and heartbreak, even as she helped create some of television's most joyful moments. The truth Vivian finally revealed reminds us that even in Hollywood's golden glow, the human stories are rarely simple. She was more than just Ethel, more than just a supporting character. She was a trailblazer who brought authenticity, humor, and resilience to the screen. And though she often feared being forgotten, her story endures, not only as Lucy's partner in comedy, but as a woman who dared to reveal her truth, even when it wasn't pretty.